Alex Hormozi used to walk into exams without studying and walk out with a 91. There was a kid in his class who couldn't do that. Worked constantly, went to study hall, was the guy who reminded the teacher they'd forgotten to set homework. Hormozi gave him a hard time for it and says now it was probably because the kid reminded him of something about himself he didn't want to look at. Then they applied to university. Hormozi wanted Duke. He didn't get in. The other kid did. His own summary of it is that not one admissions office cared he'd worked less. They cared who had the better application. Everything he teaches now grows out of that afternoon. And the claim holding it all up turns out to be measurably wrong, which is awkward because the advice built on top of it mostly works. Start with the piece that has nothing to do with working hard. He tells people not to follow their passion, not as a provocation. His argument is that passion is a terrible instrument for choosing anything because you can't reliably say you like this more than that, but you can usually say you're better at this than that. And the direction runs the opposite way from how it's sold. We don't get good at things we love. We come to love things we get good at. He adds a second point that's harder to argue with. Your passions will change. What he cared about at 20 isn't what he cares about now, and he assumes the same about 50. So building your life around one fixed thing puts an absurd weight on that thing being right forever. There's a whole book making this case with the evidence Hormozi doesn't bother with. Cal Newport's So Good They Can't Ignore You, subtitled Why Skills Trump Passion. His argument is that people who genuinely love their work built the skill first and the feeling showed up afterwards, and that chasing the feeling first produces job hopping and anxiety. Worth knowing where the phrase comes from, too. Steve Martin, asked why he'd succeeded, said, "You should be so good they can't ignore you." Fair warning on both men, they overstate it into a choice, as if enjoying something disqualifies it. Reviewers hit Newport on exactly that. The usable version is softer. Competence is the input you can control. Passion is downstream. That's one, and it's the only one on this list that will annoy people. The second is about volume, and it comes with a number most people won't believe. For one book launch, his team made more than 2,000 advertisements, not 2,000 impressions. 2,000 pieces of creative built at maybe 25 a day for hundreds of consecutive days, before the campaign even began. His framing is that most people don't fail from doing the wrong thing. They fail from doing far too little of the right thing, then changing it. And he has a genuinely sharp argument for why changing things is a trap. Every change carries a fixed cost because the team has to relearn it and other things break. In his experience, output drops around 20% while that happens. The reward is variable and might be 5%. So you're taking a guaranteed loss for a possible small gain over and over and calling it optimization. Which is why, he says, the periods where he made the most money were the boring ones. Nothing new. Same thing, more of it. That's two. The third is the one you can use tomorrow, and it's about speed rather than judgment. His rule. If a decision takes 5 minutes to make and 10 minutes to fix when wrong, don't spend 2 hours deciding. Make the call. If you're right, you moved 5 minutes later. If you're wrong, 15. Either way, you beat the version of you, still weighing it up. The line that makes this stick is that the heaviest things in life aren't iron or gold. They're unmade decisions. There are probably 3 sitting in your head right now, taking up room, doing nothing. And he's specific about where people actually slow down, not in the doing, in the deciding. Doing usually takes very little time. The objection writes itself. Some decisions really are irreversible. His answer is that far fewer are than people pretend. Buying the wrong car isn't permanent, you sell it, and the real cost is the gap between what you paid and what you get back. Set against 6 months of not having the car you needed, that gap is usually small, which reframes the whole thing. The cost of deciding slowly is invisible and continuous. The cost of deciding wrong is visible and one-off. People optimize against the one they can see. That's 3. Quick one, because I want to know if this is universal or just me. How many unmade decisions are sitting in your head right now? Just the number. The fourth is the one nobody has a word for, and he invented a decent one. Ignorance debt. Financial debt is obvious. Ignorance debt is the cost of what you don't know but should, and he claims he still pays it down daily. The interest is invisible, which is exactly why it compounds. You don't get a statement. His definition of an expert follows from it. Someone who has already made every mistake available in one narrow field, which means the mistakes weren't the detour. They were the tuition. And there's a reason people don't pay it down, which he's honest about. Paying it costs you looking stupid, publicly, in front of people whose opinion you've decided matters. He tells a story against himself here. He nearly didn't sell a company for $46 million because he thought a colleague wouldn't be impressed by the number, not family. A colleague. His test is to name the voice. Whose judgment is this, and have I agreed to hand them control of my decisions? Once it has a name, it usually collapses. That's 4. And the 5th is why almost nobody does any of the above. Consistency is invisible. He puts it as a race. Crowds gather at the start line and the finish line. The winning happens in the empty middle, where nobody is watching. No single workout is impressive. No single skip night out is impressive. You cannot watch someone be consistent, because consistency takes 20 years, and you'd have to be there for all of it. So the one trait that reliably works is the one trait you can never see demonstrated, which is why it stays underrated while flashier things get copied. You can watch someone take one shot. You cannot watch someone take 10,000. He pairs it with something less comfortable. Everything you spend time on that isn't the goal is you deciding through behavior rather than words that it mattered more than the goal. Not as an accusation, just as a reading of where the hours went, which makes the trade smaller than it sounds. You aren't giving up something precious. You're giving up things you won't remember by Thursday. That's 5. Now compare that to how intelligence normally gets discussed. The usual conversation is tests, scores, brain training apps, unlocking your potential, whatever supplement is fashionable. All of it treats intelligence as a hidden quantity to be measured and then somehow increased. Every single thing on Hormozi's list is a behavior. Not one of them is about your brain at all. Which brings us to the part where he's wrong. He states, plainly, that you'll be rewarded far more in life for your determination than your intelligence. He defines intelligence as the speed at which you change your behavior after new information. That's not what intelligence means, and the comparison doesn't hold. The largest review of the research pulled together 584 effect sizes from 88 studies covering nearly 67,000 people. It found that perseverance correlates with the personality trait conscientiousness at around 84, close enough to be the same thing wearing a different name, and that it predicts success less well than cognitive ability does. The authors concluded that trying to boost it would likely have weak effects, so determination doesn't beat intelligence. Determination is mostly a personality trait we already had a word for, and it's the weaker predictor, which should sink the whole video. It doesn't, and this is the part worth staying for. Look at what he's actually describing. Speed of behavior change is not intelligence, but it is real, it is measurable, and unlike intelligence, it is something you can act on. Cognitive ability in adults is largely fixed. Advice about it is therefore useless, no matter how accurate. He picked the wrong word for the right variable, and that accident is why the advice works. Because if he were correct, if intelligence really were the thing that mattered, then the honest conclusion is that you should stop watching, because there'd be nothing to do about it. His mistake is the only reason there's anything actionable here at all. Go back to that classroom. He was the one with the easy 91. The other kid did the work. The work won. That story doesn't prove intelligence is worthless. Hormozi got into Vanderbilt, which is not a story about a stupid person. What it proves is narrower and more useful. Intelligence got him the 91. It couldn't get him the application because the application needed something he was choosing not to do. He's half right. The half that's wrong is the sentence he leads with. The half that's right is everything he does about it.